Hey everyone, this is Keith Giles back trying to make another video here from Tuesday Night Worlds. It was this week, I think on June 7th, and we did double Alton. So we pick up here towards the end of Ruffner Road. I shortened the first part because these videos get to be too long and too overwhelming to do if I do the whole ride. It was a smaller group today. Some guys were taking an easy week, but still had plenty of fast riders to keep the pace high and make it hard as could be. And at this point, towards the end of Ruffner, most of the group was still together. Some new faces I hadn't seen in a while this year, so that was pretty cool. Ruffner was funny because it was really wet, and also because we delayed the start a little bit, we ended up having to overtake the Gardens group ride, which there's a good reason why we leave at 5:30 and they leave a little bit later, because we're going a little faster, and the incidents when we have to go by them, it happened totally smooth today. But you can see here's an example of a few riders that we had to pass. It can be a little tricky, and if you get large groups passing other large groups, things can go sideways. And yeah, you can see up the road there. There's a ton of them. So, and it also happened at a weird spot, which is kind of right at the end of Ruffner when we merge with 11. But nevertheless, we certainly were riding really hard. There was a lot of people pulling through. There wasn't a few little attacks at the very start, but nothing that was really a threat to stick. Just enough to really stretch the group out and tire everybody out. So if you look in the rear camera here, you can see that there's still a ton of people back there. And I would say there hasn't been any real major splits. But one thing that really was interesting to me is how much of a split occurs right here. So if anyone's watching this and they're trying to do better at staying at the front, do not think that this moment when we hit Ruffner and go to 11 and then make a quick turn on John Rogers, another quick turn on Alton, do not think of this as a moment to rest, because if you do that, you will soon be spending some time by yourself. There's a moment right on 11 where we were kind of chilling, but because it's a series of turns and you have to watch out for traffic, you can see the group has actually gotten more spread out than it was at the end of Ruffner. And then as soon as you turn right on John Rogers, there's this incline, which you can see I'm doing 600 watts and, just to hold people's wheels. So, and if you look in the rear view, you can see there's a big gap. And I think a bunch of guys got dropped right there. So it's if you make Ruffner, that's good. And you really just want to be able to give it whatever you've got on that hill, because you get a quick downhill rest, and the first part of Alton going out is downhill. So it's smart to just, if you made it through Ruffner, all you got to do is another 20-30 seconds of effort, and you can actually recover. But people either aren't in the mood for that or just don't realize that. And as you can see, we have a pretty, I think the split that we have, well, not fully, but there's a pretty big split that just happened, and there's going to be another one that comes up. But anyways, so here we are bombing down Ruffner, and it always amazes me how fast this crew can go, especially we're going downhill and 34 miles an hour downhill, and I'm still having to put over 300 watts to try to hold the wheel. These four guys trying to get away. You see in my shadow there, I just glanced backwards. I wasn't sure if I was alone, so I didn't know how much of a gap there was, and if I was, I could have bridged that a little quicker, but I thought, well, if I'm alone, I need to quickly get to this wheel, and if I'm not, someone else is going to have to pull, because I just did a lot. And I realized there were some people back there, so I just slid over, and you can see MP just shot right through. He rode so hard today. Haven't seen him all year. I don't know how much he's been riding, but to show up at Worlds and just attack like this is just, it's so impressive. It's so hard to do because we're moving fast. I mean, we're going 30 miles an hour. He just attacked. I mean, people don't normally attack when a group's going 30 miles an hour. So, I like to take different things from Worlds depending on what my mood is that week. There's been a couple rides earlier in the year where I wanted to attack and see how that played out. I realized the way that typically plays out is, I attack, it doesn't last, and then I'm just exhausted. So I wanted, and I did that a few times in the earlier part of the season. And today, the last few times I wanted to just kind of I always want to pull through and do my part, but I also wanted to try to save something for the end. Um, maybe ride a little bit smarter, a little more strategic, and that's kind of what I was doing today. So I knew that it was probably too early for me to do anything, you know, aggressive. So I was pulling through and keeping the pace high, but to the extent that I could. But I wasn't trying to get away. So you can see I pulled through here and slid over, and I've only putting out 200 watts. That's below my critical power. I mean, I can hold that. That's not burning matches for me at all. But I figured some attacks are coming. They really didn't. It was just people pulling through, and so, you know, Worlds is never chill, but that right there, that last 20, 30 seconds is about as chill as it's ever going to get. So we still have a pretty good group of guys at this point. I think the next big split will come towards the end of Alton because that's a steep hill that doubles as the finish line on the next lap. And it's easy. Again, when you have a steep hill into a turn, it's easy to get separation there because people are. It's really not cool because people are kind of looking for cars at the same time as they're trying to hold your wheel, but that's just how it is. The pull through there that Travis just did, it may not look like much, but like we're not going super. It's slightly uphill, going 24 miles an hour. I'm doing 270 in a pace line. That far back tells you that the guys in the front are working, and he just pulled all the way through by himself. Um, that's hard. That's I know he had to be breathing heavy when he got to the front, and there he seemed to slide over once he got through, which is makes total sense. And here I am on Brad's wheel, and he rode pretty hard too. Decided he wanted to sit that pull through out. Nothing wrong with that. So I kind of slide up here and try to keep contact. This would have been a perfect chance for an attack if I was wanting to do that. The way that I knew that the group was a little spread out and Pete pulled through nice and slid over, I could have just shot up the road, but I just, I wasn't in the mood for it just yet. I know how challenging the, coming back on John Rogers is, so I'm kind of like I'm kind of waiting for that. And it's watching this back now, seeing just how spread out the group got. Had I decided to do that, which would have been foolish, I would have probably got some separation because MP does it, and look how far ahead he goes. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to chase, but I've learned over the years, like, don't chase off the front. It doesn't work for me. I have a tendency when I do sprints, my heart rate soars and I struggle to catch my breath. That's kind of my weakness. So I like to try to keep things as steady as I can unless I'm the one attacking. And I'm just not gonna chase somebody off the front. Of course, at this time, it looks like I ended up doing it anyways. But that was after about four people pulled through, and then I thought, well, I guess it looks like we're getting dropped here at this point, so I might as well. And we do have a pretty good gap. I didn't realize at the time that we did. But in Worlds, when you got so many strong riders, especially I think that's Cannoli back there bridging us up. I mean, you're going to see in a little bit just what happens when he's in a peloton and he decides he doesn't want people to get away. Yeah, that's him bringing us back. We might have been gone, and I decided I'd had enough at this point and let those two go. it's so hard. Like, ignorance is bliss sometimes. I mean, I would have liked to have stayed with that front group that kind of attacked there, but I just know what's coming, and so it's hard to do it this early. I knew it wasn't going to stick. I know that there's a crazy hard climb on Rogers that is just you're going to take everything you got just to hold people's wheel, and I'm like, I'm not sure I want to do this just yet. And you can hear I'm breathing like, panting like crazy already. So my heart rate there is 160. Remember, my max heart rate is like about 172. So, when I get into the 160s, the clock is definitely ticking. All right, so some interesting things are about to happen right here. Um, Again, I didn't want to. I had a feeling there was going to be an attack as soon as we turned because there always is, and I knew I probably should have been in. Oh, the guys are already up the road, so I missed that. There's one or two people somehow got up the road and stayed up there, and I missed what happened. But yes, these guys are going to try to bridge, and this was like the most half-assed thing I've ever done. Like I kind of wanted to be with this because I had a feeling it might get away, but I also was thinking I wanted to wait a little bit longer. At some point, you just got to stop waiting and go for it. Definitely not my strongest day today. I don't remember that guy being up the road. I don't know where he came from, but so I don't think anybody had attacked just yet. There, somebody went. Jason followed, and this is a good wheel to have if you're trying to bridge up. I mean, if you can see, I was just doing 400 watts, sucking his wheel. So we weigh about the same. He had to be doing almost between 400 and 500 watts this whole time. Oh, there are people up the road. See, it's easy to get, even with the camera, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what's happening. I don't remember when that group got away or how they got away. I'll have to go back and rewatch that. The rear camera's got water on it. Unfortunately, it kind of comes on and off throughout the ride. Right now, it just looks ridiculous. So there's a lot of water right here, so we had to kind of take it easy. You can see, I mean, you could have easily got messed up if you went through that puddle. So there's a group 10, 15 seconds up the road. I know that there's three people in it. I don't remember exactly when they got away, but I knew they were away at this point. And Canoli's about to do probably the most impressive thing I've seen on a bike this year. Um, John Rogers here, it starts off flat, and then there's a long, steady climb that if you go and do it by yourself and you're just kind of riding, it won't stand out as much. But on this double Alton Loop, I mean, we've all been to the limit now for a while, for 30, 40 minutes, and then having this somewhat long, sustained climb at this stage, it's hard. It just hits hard. Um, so I know, I mean, we obviously want to bring those guys back, and they're pretty far up there, and it's to the point now where it's like, man, if they make it to the top of this hill before us, they might be gone. Because then it's a long downhill, we're not going to catch them there, and then it's downhill again on Alton, not going to catch them there, and by the time Alton starts to like not be downhill, be flatter up, you're pretty close to the end, and so it's probably game over. And so it really kind of was now or never, and I wasn't really hurting yet. I think by the end of this pull, I'm definitely starting to be in the pain cave. But what's impressive is the fact that he has been pulling for a long time now. He started pulling when we turned on 11, and I was right on his wheel, and we started off doing about 400 watts. There, he just flicked his elbow to say standing up. Such a good, nice thing to do when you're in a group. I'm not. It doesn't. It just the pitch just got higher. So now I'm doing over, well, between 300. It looks like it's jumping around between 350 and like 420. and I'm the third wheel. So I can't even imagine Canoli's probably doing 100 more watts than that. And just pulling us all. He's been pulling for 5-6 minutes at this point. Unbelievable. So to put a little more context into what's happening right now, there's a group ahead that has got 3 really strong riders, and I know that they themselves are doing 400-watt pulls to stay away. And he's just reeling them in. He's just reeling them in. This like Herculean feat took it actually kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit for the rest of the ride, because I was just like so impressed by it that I was kind of thinking, well, I don't know that it really matters what happens from here on in, because this guy just pulled a breakaway back by himself. Nothing I do from this point on is even going to be remotely impressive compared to that. But some of these younger guys are just so strong. It's just it's fun to be able to ride with them. There, Mike decided he'd had enough, but he latches back on and ends up still having a lot left on Alton. This was the point where I was thinking, well, right when he stood up, right before he stood up, I was thinking, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I could see that we were really close to catching him, but also really close to the top, and that gives you like, well, we're not that close, but I could see the top. And that's when you kind of think, no, I can't stop now. Like, even if I crack after we catch him, like, at least see this thing through. Like, you got a little left, but you can see we're going so hard. Heart rate's back up in the 160s, and we finally caught him. He did that all himself. Wow. I'm just super impressed too by like just how strong Travis was. I mean, he was back there too, working just as hard as any of us. And as soon as we get close, he decides to shoot ahead. And I don't know where that comes from. When he did that, I just thought, yeah, I'm not doing this. There's a point here where I just say I don't got it, and Jacob comes around. It was right there. And those 4 sped ahead. I was like, I can't chase those guys. But it's amazing in cycling just how like just the tiniest little break helps, right? Like, by break I mean rest. Those guys sprinted ahead, and I'm like, I'm not doing that right now. But as soon as 4 or 5 guys came around me and I was on their wheel, that's all the recovery I needed, and I could sit in. But it looks like they didn't have a ton either, because they did a few little hard cranks at a sprint pace and then seemed to stop. So I'm the last guy in the group right now, so you can get a feel. You can see everyone there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 9 people left. Funny thing about me riding in these rides, and I talked to some folks about the differences, but for me, it's never my legs that get me. My legs never give out. Not in races this short. I don't know if this is a young old thing. It's my lungs. Like, if I'm getting dropped, it's because I've reached a point where I just can't breathe, and I'm like sucking wind, and I just have to stop. I never, in a ride that's like under 2.5 hours, my legs are never given out. But then I know other people who have said the opposite, that it's their legs that give out first. And I think that says a lot about people's physiology, right? So, if you're kind of a diesel type with someone who maybe has a high FTP but doesn't sprint that great, You know, these rides aren't going to tax your legs. Like you're not going to, you have enough energy to last at this pace. But what will get you is, you know, every time there's a sprint, it's pushing your VO2 max. You know, you're going anaerobic, and you know, that adds up. And sometimes there's just sprints you just can't match. You know, people make me have to do 700 or more watts for 10, 15, 20 seconds repeatedly. I mean, eventually there could just come one where it's like, I just can't. And it's not, my legs are fine. I just need 10 seconds. But that's why the recovery can be so fast. You know, I think once your legs are shot, recovery is not going to matter. I mean, your recovery is now measured on the hour time scale. But if it's just your lungs, you know, if you're just in a temporary oxygen debt, a few seconds of recovery, you catch your breath and you're right back again. At least that's how it is for me. All right, turning on to Alton for the last grand finale. And you know, this is a little downhill, so it's going to get fast, but the real test isn't going to come until the second half of this stretch, where we have to start climbing a little bit again. I should have probably attacked sooner just for the fun of it. I was feeling okay. Well, I guess my heart rate's pretty high right there. I felt okay though. I didn't, you know, I caught my breath and I was ready to go. But it's also silly on the downhill to really try much. Like Josh shot out, but you're not gonna get far with this group chasing. So it's almost kind of just pointless. It's just a suicide mission. This is a stretch of road that I've done countless times, like most people that live in Birmingham. But I've only raced it, whatever you want to call this world's ride. This is the third time, and the first time I wasn't even in the sprint, so that really only two times. This being the second, and it's really hard to get for me. I haven't been able to get the sprint finish down right, um, and so I messed it up both times, and I messed it up both times in the exact same way. And you'll see what happens when we get a little closer. I'll explain kind of what's going through my head and probably what I should have done. But in effect, what ends up happening is it's not like a super steep grade, but it's enough grade to matter. And I think in my head, I'm feeling like it's more of the kind of grade that's just going to separate people. So around here, you know, if you have like an average grade for about a mile of about 5%, those are like our kind of hilltop finishes, and those will just separate people. Like you don't really have to attack. I mean, some of the top guys do, but if you just ride, it's steep enough that if someone, you know, you can just drop, the grade will drop people. You don't have to do it yourself. But this little sprint here is not that steep. So you can't just ride hard and expect to drop anybody. You have to actually attack. And I've kind of forgotten that both times, where I've kind of gotten in the front or the front of a little subgroup and just kind of rode hard, thinking that there'd get separation just from that alone. But the truth is, it's all I did was serve as a lead out. And the second we can see the little false summit, which is the beginning of the actual final sprint, people just fly by me. They're just right on my wheel, and as soon as that levels off, or as soon as I slide over, they're gone. And so next time I just got to remember, like, you either got to sit in once it starts climbing and let somebody else do that, or you have to just go. And I'll, you know, knowing me, I'll probably just go and then fade. But at least I'll give myself a shot. This was a fun group. There wasn't as many attacks as there normally is, but everybody rode really hard, and everybody in this group was pulling through, keeping the pace high. Um, and the wetness kind of slowed us down a little bit. So overall, like I think it was like my second fastest time doing this route, but I felt like everybody was working hard, and that's pretty cool. I should have shot up right there. I should have just went for it. I could have. I wasn't really on the limit. I could have just thrown down a crazy sprint and bridged up and gotten in front of those two that were away, and then they would have come with me. And who knows? It would have changed the whole dynamics. I mean, we're getting pretty close to the end, and I kind of rode cowardly. I was kind of upset with myself a little bit. I'm starting to get tired now. Scott made a nice move, and they got away. I couldn't get by there, so I said, "All right, well, I guess I'm not gonna try." There was a dog. So here Jason tries to bridge up. This is where I made the mistake. Like Scott and Travis got away. I should have I could have gone around and gone with him at the start, and that might have been a smarter move. So, but instead, as soon as Jason decided, I was kind of pinned in a little bit, but as soon as Jason went, I found a way around. I was like, I'm going with him. But you can see Jason is putting out a ton of effort. I'm putting out a similar effort. I'm not really close enough to actually to be on his wheel to get much of a draft. So we're just trying to bridge it up, and I think I helped. I think I did help the lead out. Um, that really wasn't my intent, but that is kind of what happened. Um, Eventually, I realized, like, yeah, I don't have it. So I just slid over, and these guys decided, well, we do have it. Made me feel a little bit good to see Jason sit up. He's human. Just after I was also realizing I was toast. And Cannoli, he rode so hard. I mean, it's a miracle he hit anything left at all. So this is the kind of sprint hill finish. And so if you can have somebody's wheel at this point, then you're in a good spot. A little sprint finish just for the posterity's sake, even though I was way out of it. My heart rate's getting close to max at this point. Yeah, I mean, those guys, you can see Travis and Scott in the pink. I mean, they didn't. I don't think they made it. It's hard. It's hard if you go that early, but it's always fun. I mean, that was an awesome move. And there we have it. Fun, fun.